Okay, it's been a while since we've done this, and I am very clearly out of practice when it comes to this stuff. Yeah, hi friends. So it has been, I think it's been at least 9 months since I have done a live stream here on my YouTube channel, and yeah, I can tell the story of why that is, but also too, I kind of wanted to, I had a thing that I wanted to use this for, and I realized that I didn't know the next time I would have a Friday evening available. So I figured, why not do it tonight? I have nothing lined up for the evening, got some stuff lined up for the weekend and next Friday, but yeah. This seemed like a good evening to do this. So if you're out there in Livestream land, please chime in the chat. Let me know that you can hear me, because sometimes that indeed becomes a little bit of a challenge for... Hey there, Jillian. It becomes a little bit of a challenge with the technology stuff. So, yeah. You can hear me just fine out there, right, Jillian? We've got Ronan Martian Eidolon. I definitely do not know how to pronounce that. Hello, welcome. Looks like we've got at least 6 viewers out there. Ronan says I sound good. Outstanding. That's good to hear. There's a little bit of a delay between what y'all type out and when I see it, simply because of the way that YouTube does live streaming. So just know that that is a factor in play here, and that it might take me a second to respond when you post something here. Thank you all for joining me tonight. I know I did this on very, very, very short notice, so I appreciate y'all spending your Friday evening with me, or perhaps, depending on where you are in the morning, maybe your Saturday morning, who knows. Anyhow, so yeah, it's been a long... McPoira is out there. Hello there, sir. Evening. Yes, it is evening. You're in Europe, right? So yeah, that it is definitely evening where you are at. Looks like about a minute lag. That sounds about right. That sounds about right. Yeah, the way the streaming software works. Oh, it's Saturday morning here. Just. Oh, I gotcha. We're just past midnight where you're at. Fair enough. Yeah, YouTube builds in a pretty long buffer on these things. So, yeah, we're going to have a little bit of Scotland. You're in Scotland. It is just past midnight. Aha. So you are on Greenwich Mean Time then, and I am 5 or 6 hours off of you, I believe. I think it's 5. Yeah. So there will be a little bit of a delay going back and forth, unfortunately, but what can you do? Yeah, so thank you all for joining me. So there were 3 things I kind of wanted to do with this tonight. The first was to explain why there haven't been any live streams in several months now on my YouTube channel, and also one of those things that I did last fall in one of my live streams was I had a performance video that I had posted, and people have always asked me to like take some of the combos and dance stuff that I do online and break it up into the individual tricks that make it up, and I really like doing that with the last performance video, and I posted another one here right at the end of August, and I wanted to go through that process again and kind of outline what were the tricks that I was using here and what were the ideas. Oh, Martin Baltunen in Bulgaria. It is 2 in the morning. My goodness. Well now, welcome. You are definitely more of a night owl than I am. Jillian, it's better being on here with you than being at Wildfire by myself, so I wouldn't miss this at all. Okay, fair enough. I don't know whether that is a positive or sad note, so I'm going to go with positive for the time being. Cool. And of course, I wanted to do some Q&A with you all, because it's been a long, long time since I've done that. So first and foremost, the explanation as to why this hasn't happened in months. So those of you who used to show up to the live streams when I was doing them the last couple years probably are noticing that there's like a line of text that's missing right at the bottom of the window here. And that is because, so it used to be that the reason I was doing these live streams was that Ronan is in Colorado Springs. Nice. Welcome. So it used to be that UltraPoi would sponsor these live streams from me every month. And truth be told, this was a thing that really stressed me out. Trying to have something prepared every month where it's like I have something I know I'm going to be able to teach for like a half an hour. It was kind of tough because I create so much content already that creating another half an hour of lesson every month was something that, like, if I wasn't being paid for it, I was kind of like, oh God, I don't know if I can do this every month. AJM is 7-Eleven in the Philippines. 7-Eleven. Goodness. Early in the morning there. You're up very early on a Saturday morning, mate. But welcome. I'm glad you're here with us. Yeah, so after a couple years of sponsoring those live streams, the guy who runs UltraPoi and I sat down. We meet every year to talk about our sponsorship arrangement. And we were looking at the numbers for the live streams in 2022, and they weren't doing so hot. And at the time, the weekly videos that I was doing, the kind of like little tutorials that were under a minute that I was posting to Instagram that UltraPoi was sponsoring, were doing really well. So Faye Monique says heaven. Cool, welcome. Joining us from heaven. Awesome. I hope they spend poi in heaven. Yeah, so they decided, so the guy, my contact at UltraPoi no longer wanted to sponsor the live streams, but decided to pay me more for the Instagram stuff. So I wound up getting paid exactly as much money, but no longer had the financial backing to. Jimmy Slaughter's watching from the USA. Awesome. Yeah, but basically without the financial incentive to stress myself out and come up with a half-hour lesson every month, I just didn't do it. So it's been a long time. It's been a long time. Martin says, can you do a Gunslinger with pod poi with no capsules? Yes, I can. I am having serious trouble understanding how they even work from your videos. Your best one is with capsules. Only knob is like impossible. It's not impossible. It's so the trick is that there's several tricks. The biggest one is that you have to train your hand to have an absolute death grip on the tether, so it can't slide out. And the point where you grip it switches from being halfway along to the tether to 1/3 of the way along the tether. It is possible. Let's see here. You're in Bulgaria, so Killian Waldman says, hi Drex, you have ignited my poi passion with your Learn Poi in COVID series. Yay, I'm eternally grateful for your teachings. Big thanks. My pleasure. I'm so glad to hear that. That was the whole point of doing those videos, so I'm glad to hear it worked. All right, Martin, since you're in Bulgaria and we're already quite late in the evening for you, I'm going to go ahead and answer this question right now. I'm going to push doing a full Q&A until a little bit later, but I somehow suspect you're not going to be here still in another hour, so let me answer this one right now. Okay, so how do you make gunslingers work with pod poi? With ball handles instead of with capsule handles. The answer to this is that you want to grip the tether So like think of the length of the tether here. So normally we would, if we had an evenly weighted handle to the head that is a capsule handle, we would grip it halfway along the tether. Instead, we're going to want to grip it about a third of the way up. The way I find this point, honestly, is I kind of like leave my hand open and see at what point the handle and the head balance out with each other. That is, if I start it from halfway, then you see how the head is kind of dragging down on the tether just a little bit. If I wiggle my hand even a little bit, it starts sliding. Whereas if I do it a third of the way up, it balances out a little bit more. So from here, and this is honestly the hardest part, you have to train your hand to have an absolute death grip on the tether, because as soon as you start spinning it, the poi is gonna, like the poi head is gonna want to pull the tether out through your hand. Like if I loosen my grip even a little bit, it starts coming out. So the trick here is to, and really what I'm doing is I'm pinching the tether between my index finger, the second joint of it, and my thumb. And like, I mean, literally, you can try and pull this out of my cold dead hands, but it ain't gonna happen. And when you're able to grip the tether that tightly, you can sustain the Gunslinger. The only downside to doing it this way, of course, is that you wind up in a situation where, as you're, say, if you're interested in tracing out trails with it or doing Gunslinger flowers like this, you're going to find that one end of the Gunslinger is farther away from your hand than the other. So like the trails will be such that you have one very narrow flower and one very wide flower, according to whether you're following the head or the handle. But yeah, the big thing is to train your grip. The reason all those old videos feature the capsule handles is because I think it's easier to learn Gunslingers with the capsule handles. It's like learning to drive. Here in the United States, generally speaking, everybody learns how to drive with a car that has an automatic transmission to it, so you don't need to worry about shifting gears as you're driving. And then once you know how to drive a car with an automatic transmission, some people then make the choice to then go on and learn how to drive with a manual transmission. I am one of them. It is becoming more and more rare here in the United States, though. So likewise, I think it's easier to learn Gunslingers with poi that are evenly weighted between the two ends, and then switch over to doing Gunslingers with poi that are not evenly weighted. I personally absolutely despise spinning poi with evenly weighted handles. I just hate the feeling of it. I prefer my handles to be small enough that like I can pack them real tight in the palm of my hand. I don't like having my hand hanging open as I'm holding my handles. Your mileage may vary. Being into capsule handles is just as legit a choice. I'm not judging, they're just not for me. So yeah, that is the long and short of that. Oh, and people have been chiming in here. Killian Veldman says, I'm trying to add pirouettes and more dance into my spinning. Do you have any advice you could share? Oh, Martin. Wow, thanks for awesome live tutorial. It makes a bit more sense. You are my 101 for spinning now, second year. Thanks for the discount codes. You're so welcome, Martin. You're so welcome. Killian Veldman says, I'm trying to add pirouettes and more dance into my spinning. Do you have any advice you could share on pirouettes? My pirouettes aren't lead with my head. Any drills to learn them? Thanks in advance. So I can teach you the drill that I normally give people that I'm teaching pirouettes to. I mean, as best I can. They're really hard to do on carpet here. The real answer to this is, if you're asking this question, find a local dance studio and sign up for dance classes. Contemporary Modern is a great one for teaching pirouettes. That said, I can give you a rough outline of how to do pirouettes right now. I will warn you though, AJM, I love your short video on YouTube. Thank you so much. Yeah, the shorts have been a fun format for me to work with for sure. All right, Killian. So, here's the exercise I give to people that want to learn how to do pirouettes. I did not set up my home studio properly for this. I hope you will forgive me. My feet will not always be as visible as I would like them to be. So, what you want to do is you want to start off by practicing. I'm going to get on the carpet for this. You want to start practicing starting from, so this is basically like having your weight kind of evenly distributed between your 2 feet, and like your knees bent and all that. And what you're gonna want to try and do is, so I've got my left leg behind right now. I want to practice coming up, whoop, on my right tiptoes and holding it there with my left foot at my right knee. So I want to go from a pirouette. My left hand is forward, my right is straight out to the side, my left foot is behind my right foot. I want to come up and then step forward. So when I step forward, my left foot comes towards the camera, my right foot is behind me, and again, I'm in this place where I've kind of got even weight distribution between the 2 feet, and both of my knees are bent. Both of them are in a plie. And when I come down, I want to reverse the orientation of my hands. So I've got my right hand reaching straight towards the camera, I got my left hand out to the side. In other words, whichever foot is behind, that same side, that hand is reaching towards the camera. And from here, I'm going to go up on my left tiptoes, whoop, and step down so I come back down in the position that I started in. So I want to go from right foot behind, or excuse me, left foot behind, left foot up, right foot behind, right foot up. And you would literally just like find yourself a nice long track of floor, either indoors or outdoors, and just practice coming up on your tiptoes and bringing your leg from behind up to meet the opposite knee. You just want to practice that and see if you can like sustain being up on your tiptoes, like 1 1,000, 2 1,000, come down, 1 1,000, 2 1,000, come down. My form is not great for this. I hope you will forgive me. So once you get a knack for that, you're going to turn that walk into an exercise wherein you're going to try doing pirouettes in various degrees of turn around you. What do I mean by that? Well, so instead of coming up and stepping out, when you come up, you're going to go ahead and the arm that's coming from outside is going to come in to meet the other one. I think this is like a first in ballet. And what you're going to wind up doing is turning your entire body a quarter turn, boom, to the left. And then when you take your step down, you have changed the direction that you are facing. Now, when I bring my right knee up and I bring my left hand around, boom, I turn my entire body 180 degrees. So the first turn was 90 degrees, come down. Second turn is 180 degrees, come down. The next turn is going to be 270 degrees, and the final turn is going to be, boom, 360 degrees. So you basically do a pattern of 4 of these steps. You go 90, 180, 270, and 360. So the last 2 turns, you both end it facing the same direction. This is going to teach you control in terms of like how far you turn each time. And starting off with the exercise where you're going up on your tiptoes and holding it for a second, that's going to build core strength. And like if you can keep this shape sustainable for a couple seconds, then that's the amount of like kind of control in your center that you want to be able to have to do these pirouettes. Because if you try and do them, say like leaning a little bit, it's not going to work. The only way this works is if you have that momentum going upward and you're able to keep your body together as you're doing those turns. So that is how I would start on pirouettes. Just learning to get that control down, learning to spot those different degrees where you land, and getting that core control there so you can go up and kind of just like however long you want to do the pirouette for, you're holding your body together for it, yeah? This is going to take a while to learn. This took me months to get down even the basic version of this when I was taking dance classes. So be patient with yourself, especially if you don't have a dance background. This stuff takes a while to learn. It takes a little while to get it in your body. Don't get discouraged, and by all means, if you just want to start off doing the quarter turns to get a feel for it, absolutely do that. Build your way up incrementally. Do quarter turns, do half turns, do 3/4 turns before you get all the way to full turns. And then maybe someday, if this feels stable enough for you, you can do multiple turns in a row. I'm at a point now where I feel relatively comfortable doing a turn and a half, but I'm still not all the way to being able to do two turns in a row. People who can do like 3 or more turns in a row just absolutely blow my mind. That stuff is astounding to me. All right, what'd I miss? Jillian says, I've been spinning consistently since May of 2022. Before then, didn't have a good set of poi, so thank you for turning me on to pod poi. Love them so much. They are my go-to LED poi now. You're so welcome. I'm very, very glad they have been working out for you. Martin says, wow, oh yeah, I already saw that. David Russell says, hello Drex, you're amazing. Your tutorials are so on point, technical, but accessible to all levels of skill. Thank you so much. You are the reason I've become so proficient with poi. Thank you for radiating with us. My pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks for joining us tonight. Jimmy, have you done a tutorial on different turn transitions? I think poi turns are so beautiful, and I would love to see if you had suggestions for maybe an intermediate or semi-intermediate poi spinner. I'm trying to think. Killian says, thank you so much. Amazing demonstration. Got something to keep me busy for the next week now. Yes, probably multiple weeks actually. So when you say turn transitions, so do you mean just like switching up between different types of turns? Like say, if we were to say for the sake of argument, my space is so small, it is too small to do this. So like, for instance, if I was doing chaîné turns and then decided to do a pirouette, is that kind of what you're talking about? I mean, so the way I transition between turns is honestly, I try to build up momentum. One of the great ways to build up momentum is like, it drives me nuts that like, this is something that is so common in the dance world, and one of the biggest things that we get robbed of when we just like spin as tech trees and like lock our knees and everything, is that one of the primary ways you build momentum in the dance world is you do pliés. You bend your knees, and when you kind of recover from that, or I guess it's like, when you bend your knees, it's almost like winding up a spring. And then when you release the tension on that spring, that gives you so much momentum to move around. So often the reason when people like are trying to do turns with poi and they're kind of awkward, it's that like, rather than having that kind of spring in their step, they're kind of like rooted in place. Again, there's a reason that we call this position a tech tree. And so like knowing how to use momentum to like go between those pliés and using them for various different purposes, I think is really essential. Knowing how to chain them together, how to add and work off momentum, because of course like there's a lot of ways that you can work off momentum. I love doing my tours jetés, and then I can take that momentum down low and like change the plane it's in. That's another wonderful thing that the dance world teaches as just like a course of fact, but we almost never play around with in the flow arts world. So look into pliés and how those can help you build up the tension that's going to make those turns work. That I think is a big piece of the puzzle. Yeah. Hope that helped. David Russell says, also Drex, as you may be aware, it is very difficult to find information on Ignis bubble poi. Can you please demonstrate orbitals and share technique for that particular set of poi? I get tangled. So the no BS is that if you want clean orbitals, use glow sticks. Like, use a set that has been built specifically for that purpose. If you cannot see the bearings, you're not going to get clean orbitals out of it, no matter what you do. If the orbitals are hidden, rather if the bearings are hidden inside of the handle, it means that the bushing where the handle makes contact with the tether is going to add some friction, so the orbitals are not going to be as clean, unfortunately. I do have my bubble poi here, and I can show you what it looks like, but I know we would all love to have a set of poi that can do absolutely everything, but I don't know, me personally, I kind of enjoy working within restrictions sometimes. I think that that's something that sometimes makes us more creative. So I do have like, there's a little ball bearing assembly inside of the handle here. So in theory, you can use these for orbitals, but like the problem is like, and I don't know if you can hear what I'm hearing there, but as soon as I start doing the orbital, if you hear that like sound, that's the sound of the tether rubbing up against the very, very edge of the handle in here. So like, if you were to take, say, the old school Flow Toys flow cord assemblies with the ball bearing swivels on them and everything, those will do orbitals for days, like, because there's no piece of hardware that's getting in the way of the bearing doing its job. When you have the bearing inside of something else, you restrict what the bearing is able to do. And it's not as though it's like totally useless. Like, you get a longer orbital out of it than you would, say, with like a set of contact port. Well, actually, here, let's do a comparison right quick. So I have my pod poi, and these have the Smithy rope tethers on them. So like, there's no bearings here. There's no bearings at all. It's just the tethers going straight in. And let's see how long an orbital I can do with these, just having the tethers spinning inside of the handles. All right, I counted that as 4 seconds. Let me try it again. 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, 4. So like 3.5 seconds. 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, 4 1,000, 5. Okay, so I'm going to count that as 4.5 seconds. So let's see what's the longest orbital I can get with these bubble poi. And again, these have ball bearing swivels inside the handles, but the tethers are making contact with the outsides of the handles, so they're adding some friction to this. So let's see how long an orbital I can get out of these. 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000. 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, 4. 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000. 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1. Okay, so I'm going to say that these max out at about 4 seconds. So despite the fact that the bubble poi have those bearings inside the handles, it doesn't functionally make the orbital last longer than it does in a set of poi that have no bearings whatsoever inside the handles. What matters is the amount of friction that the tether has with the handle itself. So, I know that that is a deeply unsatisfying answer, but that is the answer. If you really, really, really want long orbitals, you got to look specifically for a set that have those ball bearing swivels, and most importantly, they have to be outside the handles. They have to be like, they have to be past the end of the handles and where you would grip them in order to make any kind of difference. I believe that the Helix poi tethers from Ultra poi still get sold with tether assemblies like that. But they're kind of a dying breed. They're like, we don't get nearly as much call for orbitals these days. Which, I mean, I understand. It is a really, like, adding those bearings is a really specific piece of hardware that is essentially completely useless for all but just one trick. And it makes a set of poi much cheaper not to have the the bearings on there for sure. And also too, I think that the influence that glow stringing has had on poi has been waning in the past few years. Like, there's way more influence from like juggling these days instead of glow stringing, which I also think that we still have a lot of lessons to learn from our glow stringer friends out there, but that's just me. Let's see here. Killian said, thanks so much, amazing demonstration. Awesome, got something to keep me, oh yeah, I already said that one. Jillian, debating if I should get a set of Vision poi with FPC tethers and flow mass or Vision poi with pod poi shells. The Vision poi I have now are too light for me. That's how good I am getting. I mean, I've been going for a decade and a half, and I'll be honest with you, I change up the weight that I'm using in my poi depending upon the task. Like the video I want to show you all tonight, the one that is the dance performance that I recorded back in June and I released in August. I'm using a set of Flow Moja poi in it, and I had to choose them actually very specifically because the choreography moves so quickly. It couldn't be done with a heavier set of poi. Like there's no way I could do this performance with a set of Ultra poi, and like I would basically wreck my shoulders and arms doing that. To say nothing of the fact that I'd be missing half of the music cues. So weight is something that you're gonna like. There's no one right weight. It's what is the right weight for the particular task that you're working on. And sometimes as a beginner, it's better to have heavier poi. And sometimes as intermediate and advanced poi spinner, it's better to have heavier poi for some tasks and it's better to have lighter poi for other tasks. So it totally depends. I can't tell you what is the right set of poi for you in terms of the Vision poi. I will say, so I've still got the Smithy rope on my Vision poi, and they do me just fine. I do like the FPC tethers. I haven't tried out FPC tethers on a set of Vision poi though, so I've got no idea what those feel like. I really like the FPC tethers with Flow Moja poi. That feels like an excellent confluence of things. And I have not tried Vision poi with pod poi shells, unfortunately. So I can't give you advice on that one, I'm afraid. I guess I might ask like what the specific, like what you're hoping to get out of the Vision poi. As the thing is like they're really, really cool patterns. And for the most part, the patterns are good for a lot of basic poi tricks and like flower patterns. But clearly you can't do contact with them or anything like that. Yeah, It'll depend on what you're trying to do with them. Sunny says, hi mate, brand new to poi. I'm in a wheelchair. Can you show me a few moves I can practice sitting down? Goodness. Wow, pressure's on here, Drex. Yeah, I think so, actually. I think so. So the big one I would suggest would be butterflies. So, or butterflies or thread the needle. I think that like you can get a good amount of, you can reach your arms out and get a good amount of distance from your body and knees. You're gonna have to lean forward just a little bit as you're doing this. But yeah, thread the needle I think would be good. If you wanna just do a butterfly and keep both hands equally distant out in front of you, I think that would be a good fit. I'm trying to think here of stuff that would work in wheel plane. I think a 3-beat weave would actually be a good fit sitting in a wheelchair, because you can veer it pretty far to either side of your body here. And I think you could veer it, I don't know what kind of mobility you have in your upper body. The more mobility you have in your upper body, the better here. You can veer pretty hard to either side, and you should be able to get the poi clear of the edges of the wheelchair then. Those are the two that I can think of off the top of my head. But let me actually marinate on that, because that would be an excellent topic for a video. If you wanna email me directly there, mate, I'm Drex at DrexFactor.com. That's my email. I might actually suggest a few tricks, and you can give me some feedback on what are the things that work and what are the things that don't. And you can be like, you know, hey, I know that you thought that this was going to work in theory, but it's running up against this problem and this problem and this problem, stuff that I would never even think of being like fully able-bodied. Yeah, if you'd be interested in going back and forth on that, I would love that. That'd be really helpful, and I think that would make a great topic for a video. The topic of doing a video on specific poi tricks for people who may lack full mobility is something that's come up in the past. And the thing I've always gotten stuck on is because I have full mobility, there are things that I just don't know will not work. So I would rather have some feedback from somebody for whom that is their lived experience before I go and start making pronouncements there. So you can let me know if you're up for that. Jimmy Slaughter says, like, how somebody will be in the middle of a meltdown and then turn with it. Oh, yeah, I think I know what you're saying there. So the annoying thing is that, like, so the specific thing you're talking about there has to do with the mechanics of reels. Because really, you can think of a meltdown as being a set of very glorified reels that go around your hips. And there are specific rules about how you transition and turn with reels that'll change depending upon where you put the reel, unfortunately. Yeah, so what guidance can I give you right now on this one? So if we just work with the specific circumstance of a meltdown. So if what I think you're saying is correct, you're talking about doing that thing where we can turn all the way around with it, like so, which basically comes down to understanding the mechanics of what's happening in a meltdown. So from this spot right here where so I'm spinning clockwise, and I think of the start of a clockwise meltdown as happening when I have my right hand crossed over in front of me and my left hand crossed over behind. Because from here, I'm basically like opening up my whole body for a second before crossing it back over and putting my left hand in front of my right and feeling like the poi are kind of going forwards over here on my right hand side. So like the version of the Meltdown that you turn with that is the version that I think you're talking about, starts from the end here. And it basically involves taking the movement of the poi and moving your whole body with it. So as so as the right hand poi is going down towards your legs, you're basically looking for this moment when both of the poi are pointed straight out away from you, and that is your opportunity to turn with it. The thing is that when you turn with it, as you wind up looking towards the back of the room, you've essentially switched up which Meltdown you're doing. So now, instead of having to recross everything up before you can open, you're actually turning in the direction that you can open up your arms. And so now, as you carry the poi around, you basically find yourself in a spot where you can cross back up to what I think of as the beginner position, the beginning of this, with the right hand crossed in front of the left. I'm doing a terrible job of explaining this because like the mechanics of it are kind of difficult to think through. But the long and like, if you want to drill this in steps, the way to do it is to start with left hand in front, right behind, wait for that moment when the right hand poi is going down past your feet, and as you turn, you open for a second, and then you continue to turn, and you should turn all the way over to having the right hand in front and the left hand behind. Sorry. So from here, we open and go all the way around to right in front, left behind. Yeah, it's kind of obnoxious, I'm not gonna lie. And kind of counterintuitive too. But yeah, that's what I would recommend for that. Adding the spring does look way better. Yeah, I agree. McPoira says, tree rex is my favorite term for this horrible condition poi spinners have been afflicted with. I'm putting that one in my back pocket. Tree rex, that's amazing. Yes, you're not wrong, because it's that combination of like doing the tech tree pose and having the T-Rex arms. Yes, it is an affliction that I am very much trying to break the poi spinning world out of right now. For those of you that are not currently, watch out for the shorts that I upload every Tuesday. They include dance tips to get your feet moving and to make your poi tricks look prettier, because when you get your whole body involved, everything looks a lot cooler, I'd say. Jamie Slaughter says, thanks. David Russell, thank you. This is very niche. I appreciate your help with the bubble poi. My pleasure. Your explanation for the Meltdown turn is great as well. I'm definitely going to try this out. Thank you. You're welcome. David Russell, a philosophical question for the master. Everything in the universe spins, and poi feels like a great expression that uses universal motion. Do you have any spiritual or energetic connection with poi? You're going to be very disappointed in my answer, but I'm not a spiritual person. I don't like. So like, I think it's cool that. Okay, let me put it this way. So have you ever done that thing where you'll pick up whatchamajigget, like a pineapple from the store, and if you count the spirals that the pineapple has going one way and count the spirals that the pineapple has going the other way, there'll always be two different numbers of the Fibonacci sequence. The reason for this being that the Fibonacci sequence, is basically a series that the bigger and bigger numbers you get to, when you divide neighboring numbers by each other, you get closer and closer to an approximation of a irrational number called phi. That's phi, not pi, pi. That's a different irrational number. And phi is known as the golden ratio because it pops up so often in nature. And I think that this is really cool because it's a practical demonstration of mathematics, it's a practical demonstration of why mathematics is important. Namely, that you very frequently find that the solution to a problem is so powerful that it is the solution to multiple problems. We should expect to find mathematical balance in nature. We should expect to find phi repeated again and again because it's an incredibly efficient way to pack two objects together in such a way that they are both able to efficiently collect light and water and things like that and not interfere with each other. And so I absolutely think it's incredibly cool that mathematically some of these very simple concepts explain so many things that happen in nature, in the universe. I don't necessarily see that as something that makes me feel a kind of like mystic connection with the universe or anything like that. I think it's cool on an academic level. I've tried out many types of spirituality in my day, and when it comes right down to it, I am an atheist. I'm not spiritual. I think, and that is not to say that I think people that are spiritual are deluding themselves or anything like that. I am in support of people finding spirituality where it works for them. I am not anti-religion. I have seen an incredible number of acts of charity through various churches that have made me very, very hopeful for the future of humanity. I think there's a very vocal minority of religious people that give an incredibly large number of religious people a very bad name. But I think that's true in any spiritual system. I think that there are, I think that there are, scumbag New Age spiritualists just as there are scumbag Christians. And yeah, I think that you find the answer that works for you. And the answer that works for me is recognizing that, mathematics is the language of patterns. And we find similar patterns throughout nature because so often, there's a similar answer to two different problems. When you look at two bodies rotating around each other and there is a force of attraction between the two, you find commonalities for how they move, simply because the major variables in play are exactly the same. So I don't see poi as creating a connection for me with the universe. What creates a connection for me with the universe is seeing the latest pictures that are coming in from the James Webb Space Telescope, or finding out the latest things that astronomers are discovering about our universe and black holes and exoplanets and things like that. That is what makes me feel a connection with the universe. And right now we are learning so. We are like, I don't know if y'all realize this, but like, there was definitely a golden age of astronomy that happened 1600s with the invention of the telescope, and being able to get clear pictures of stars in the universe and the movements of stars and everything. And then like it took several hundred years for people to sort through everything that we could learn through telescopes and be able to infer different things that were going on in the universe that we might not have been able to originally intuit from looking at them directly, but just from running the math on them. But the tools that we had to do this didn't fundamentally change for hundreds of years. Now, all of the sudden, like literally within the last decade, the tools have changed dramatically. We've got the James Webb Space Telescope out there in one of our Lagrange orbits that, like, for all intents and purposes, is set up in a place where ambient radiation from the Earth is not a problem, and it is picking up light in a wavelength that basically tells us an enormous amount about the early life of the universe in ways that we have been unable to glimpse it up until now. And also, too, we're living in the age of gravitational wave telescopes. This is mind-blowing. Like, the discovery of gravitational waves is quite possibly the biggest discovery in astronomy in the past 500 years. Like, not only can we, like, listen to the universe in a way that was physically impossible for any other humans in all of human history, but gravitational waves, they go through things. Like, fundamentally, when we look at something through an optical telescope, even the James Webb Space Telescope, we are limited by what we can see within our field of vision. And if there's something that sits on the other side of, like, a star or a galaxy, we can't see it at all. Like, it's blotted out, it's inaccessible to us. Gravitational wave telescopes don't work that way. Like, theoretically, we can see something in any corner of the universe now, provided it is close enough that space is not expanding past the speed of light, so that the light and gravitational waves from it could reach us. But, like, oh my Lord, it is an exciting time to be alive. And just like it did when optical telescopes were invented, it's going to take us hundreds of years to sift through the data and see what we can describe now with the tools that we currently have. Like, I kid you not, this is the most exciting time to be studying astronomy since Galileo. It is like we are living through a period of miracles when it comes to astronomy. Seriously, look this stuff up. It's incredible. I'm gonna get off my science nerd tangent now, but that might not have been the answer you're looking for, but that's the answer I've got for you here. Yeah. Oh, and you did respond. Not disappointed at all with your answer. Great explanation. Thank you for sharing a little bit about yourself and philosophy on spinning and mathematics. Everything spins, and so do you. Yes, I do. And I get real spun up sometimes. All the horizontal work could be seated, says Ronan. Maybe. So corkscrews, certainly. Anything that involves turning the body, though, if they're in a wheelchair, that's not going to work, because they have to have a hand free to be able to make that happen. At least one hand, I think. So corkscrews definitely, but I'm not sure beyond that. Anyway, let me see what else I missed out here on here. Buzzsaw would work, yeah. Alfrenanum, sorry if this was asked before, but if not, I'd like to know how you put your choreography together. Do you just flow to the music, or do you actively remember sequences, or both? Great question. So the short answer is all of the above. So, actually, let me see if there's any other questions right quick, because that would actually make a great segue into showing the performance video that I wanted to during the course of this live stream, and I can answer your question directly there and tell you how every bit of choreography in that happened. But yeah, the short answer is all of the above. There's some times when I literally just see something in my head, and I then go to work through it and figure out where my momentum needs to be in order to make it happen. There are times when I just put on some music and go to free flow, and I see something that I like, and I'm just like, hey, now I have to recapture that, which is really hard. Oh my God, taking something that was a product of the moment and making it repeatable time and time and time again, that is a huge challenge. Oh my goodness. Yeah, and yes, I actively remember sequences for sure. Sometimes there will be a sequence that I come up with that I'm kind of like looking for a home for it, and I will find something else that I'm writing that I'm just kind of like, okay, I'm gonna like drop this in here. So now it's a question of figuring out how I get there and how I get back out of it. So yes, the answer to that is literally all the above. And I do this very rarely now, but something I actually picked up from my dance teacher this is going on like a decade ago now, is actually to like take a seed idea for something that that I want to kind of write a piece on, and I'll like write a haiku about it, and then like I'll try and create choreography that describes that in movement. Yeah, so I haven't done that in a long time. That one is really challenging because it is literally starting from the get-go with like, I have a story that I'm going to tell through movement, and that is probably, for me, that's the hardest thing to write. So yes, the short answer is all the above, and I want to show you my performance video and show you and tell you exactly how I came up with all the different pieces. Sonny, thanks for such a great response, mate. I'll send you an email in the next few days. Okay, cool. Jillian Danskin, is it possible to do reverse thread the needle? Yes. And the process is the exact same for learning the thread the needle, but backwards. Basically, you do reverse butterflies and you switch which hand is on bottom each time, and then you do that with the poi. Yeah, reverse thread the needles are absolutely possible. Jimmy, your explanation for the meltdown turn is great as well. Definitely going to try that out. Outstanding. Noodle Dreamer. I've started encountering soreness, inflammation in my wrist for the first time. And aside from cutting down and spinning, do you have any advice for dealing with that or a video about it? I don't have a video about it. I mean, so the obvious first line is rice, rest, ice, I'm trying to remember compression and elevation for the afflicted muscles / joints. That's just the first line of medical care for that. And also too, I would take an anti-inflammatory like ibuprofen or aspirin. Actually, wait, ibuprofen is an anti-inflammatory. Aspirin is something different. My bad. Yeah. So. Yeah. So injury is a tough one, not the least of which because if I give the wrong advice, I could conceivably be liable. Not a big fan of that. There are definitely a lot of people that get repetitive motion injuries with poi. I think what I would say is give yourself a couple days of rest, number one. Number two, ease yourself back into it. If there's a particular trick that exacerbates the pain, try it first with lighter poi, so there's less strain, and work your way back up to your normal weight of poi with that trick, and hopefully that'll build up some of the muscles that are having a hard time. And if there gets to be a moment where your body is telling you don't do it, don't do it. Sometimes there are things that are off limits to us for various reasons. There's a reason you almost never see me do behind the back tricks, and it's that both my arm span is unusually short for my height, and also too that my shoulders aren't terribly flexible. So doing behind the back tricks is actually quite painful for me, and I tend to avoid it. So that would be my advice. Those would be the steps. Yeah. Piano Block, hey Drex, it's been awesome following your continued work on YouTube. Congrats, thanks for the inspiration. Reminder that we can all follow our artistic passions. My pleasure, my pleasure. Aphrononym says, yes, right, so many strides in our observation of the universe in the last few years. I agree. Cool. Jillian's asking how you do Zan's Diamond. I have a video on that, and I want to show this performance. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and do that, and we can come back to the questions in a second here. So let me switch things over here. Yes. Okay, so to give you some background here, friends, this is a video that I uploaded at the end of August. It's called Big Sad. I started work on this back in January. There was a song, Brian says, "Hey Drex, just want to let you know that you're a huge inspiration." Thank you. Your high quality and consistent content keeps me inspired. Well, I appreciate hearing that, Brian. Thank you so much. Blink said, "Love your videos, man. Learned a fair amount of tech poi from you that I've been able to use in Glowstream." Yes! I love it when we cross-pollinate. I started working on this back in January. The thing that started this off actually was hearing the song. It's a song by a pop-punk band based out of Texas called Balancing the Different. It's called Big Sad. And I just loved the hook in the song. I was super addicted to it right from the get-go. And I wanted to write something about it. And I wrote the first minute of this choreography, I want to say, in a very small amount of time. It took me maybe an hour. And then I had the second minute done inside of an hour. And this was an hour that was spaced apart by a week. And then it took me 3 months to write the other minute and a half of this song. It was tremendously difficult. I've never had that kind of difficulty writing choreography before, but I will guide you all through the entire thing here. Yay, actually. Is there a different setting I can use here? Okay, that should work, that should work. So here we go, Big Sad. So I'll just pause this right quick and tell you that, literally the first thing I saw was me doing that thing with my knees. That was what started this whole thing off to begin with. Having my knees going in and out at the beginning of this song was literally the first thing that came to mind. And then thinking about going between this and springing out into something different, and that's what's coming next. Incidentally, if you're curious, the flowers that I'm doing are 6-petal flowers. Alien John taught me the technique for doing this, which is to think that you're doing a box mode and then switch to a diamond mode on either side. Years ago, this is something he taught me at Fire Drums back in I want to say 2009 or 2010, and I'd never found an application for them, but I wanted to use them, and this is what I found, was to literally just take them from side to side. So the editor and I argued over that moment where I switched plane right quick. I really, really badly wanted that to show up on video before the shot changed to a different camera angle. And he fought me over it and I won, and I'm glad that I did because I think it looks cool as hell. So, if you don't know what that trick that I just did is, that is a toroid. It is specifically an isobend toroid with my hands moving in together opposites. Toroids are a type of tech poi that went out of style back 2013 or 2014, and I've been trying to bring them back. So I actually made it a goal in this performance to bring back a little bit of toroid action to try and get people interested in them again. And it also helps that they look kind of confusing. So it matched a lyric in the song where the narrator is talking about being delusional. It was a really good vocal cue. So everything that we just saw is what I literally wrote in one afternoon the first time I sat down to start choreographing to this song. I had basically all of that in my head and it just flowed out of me. Loved it. Things that were important to me to do there, number one was the knee thing. I also wanted to like change from a small volume to a big volume. I wanted to use those 6-petal flowers. I wanted to use toroids. And I also wanted to do a lot of plane breaking. I feel like plane breaking is like one of those big cornerstones of my style, and I really wanted to show it off. So the next section you're about to see, which I'm gonna just like let play through, there were two things that I really wanted to get out of it. One was that I wanted to have some fun footwork and some really, really like rapid moves. And the other one was that I wanted to have some groundwork in it. That turned out to be a big piece of inspiration for this performance overall. By the end of this, I think we're up to 3 different moments where I do something on the ground. It kind of like became a challenge that I gave myself at a certain point to be like, okay, how many times can I go do something down on the ground in this performance? So see if you can spot all of them. The first one is about to come, and this is what I wrote my second week working on this piece. I love that little pitter patter with my feet. Cool. So, nice little roll down to the floor there and everything. So this bit that you're watching right now, this second verse, this was the single hardest part of this piece for me to write by an enormous margin. I worked on this next 30-second section probably for a solid month. There were a lot of things that I tried that I just didn't like. And ultimately what I wound up doing was going with the vocal cues. Like, I didn't start out wanting this piece to actually have a narrative to it, but I literally just got stuck. I couldn't think of what I wanted to put in this verse. And so, running out of options, I started writing choreography to the lyrics, like doing stuff that was going to, you know, you'll see it in a second here. You know, there's a lyric about being angry and feeling sick, and I literally wrote the choreography around trying to express those words through movement, and it changed the entire character of the piece, where before there was absolutely no story in this piece, and now it feels to me as though the story of this, that the story here is, it's like my experiences of kind of coming back and re-engaging with the world after the pandemic, and seeing just how much had changed and how much people had changed and how very confusing that was. So let's watch the second verse here. Yeah. So that second verse is one of the hardest parts of the entire piece. There are like, because the thing is there's so many little micro accents to hit in the music, and it's one of those things that I like, the bit where I'm like, you know, feeling sick, dragging the poi around and everything in pendulums. So like I basically have to go from like full speed to like quarter speed on a dime, just like that. There's a bunch of places where that happens in that verse where I am just like hurtling forward as fast as I possibly can, and then I have to hit the brakes right away. So it's a very like start-stop kind of dynamic. And like one of the reasons why it took so long to choreograph to this particular verse was that as I was exploring all these accents and going back and forth between these extremes in tempo and pace, I found it was really challenging to consistently nail the accents. Like, this verse caused me so many problems in choreographing this piece. Like, I'll show it to you again here right quick, because I want you to appreciate just all of the things that went into this. Like, see if you can spot the moments where I have to like start and stop everything here. And then I'll let it play through. Speed it up, slow it down. Speed it up, slow it down. Yeah, so the original intention with that first chorus was to do something that was going to feel a little bit lighter and more free than the two verses that had come before it, which have like kind of glitchy and staccato feels to the choreography. Problem wound up being that when this video shoot happened, I was doing this choreography for 2.5 hours solid. And so by the time we got to the full body shots here, I was exhausted. And one of those things that I really wish had come across in the video and doesn't is just how different the feel was supposed to be between the verses and that chorus bit. It was definitely supposed to be a contrast in terms of the feel of the choreography, and I don't think it quite read. So what you're about to see is something else that like right from the beginning I knew I wanted to do with this piece, and that was that what I'm about to do is actually quoting some of the choreography from earlier. But if you'll notice, my poi now are longer than they were in the intro. In the intro, they were wrapped around my hands and kept very tight and close, and now they're a lot more free and open. And I wanted to kind of recontextualize the same bit of choreography, but give it a different feel. And by making the poi longer, the same phrase feels a lot more languid and perhaps a little sadder. It's not exactly the same, but I hope it is close enough that it reads as being similar. So I'll show you both segments here. So here is, hang on. Yeah, so here's the original. Cool, and here's the second time I bring it up. Hang on, let me find it. Yeah, here we go. So it's a 4-petal flower instead of a 6-petal flower, but otherwise it's the same phrase. And here's the money shots. So, that wasn't originally what, so when I was first envisioning what this piece was going to be in my head, I wanted that moment. I wanted that foite with the poi. I knew that I wanted that when that moment happened coming out of that bridge. And at one point in the choreography, I took that out. I had another phrase that I really liked that I thought was a good fit there. And that's what sat there for the better part of a month. And then I came back to it and was like, no, I want to fight for the foite. So I actually moved that phrase a little bit further back in the music. You'll see it in a minute here. But then it meant that I had to find a way to pad out that section. And it's funny because I've performed this now for a couple live audiences, and you know, people that aren't dancers, like the faute doesn't mean much to them, but I remember when I did this at Northwest Flow Festival in Seattle, that was the bit that there was like one person in the audience who got it, who just lost their mind when I did the faute. They were just kind of like, oh my God, which was really fun for me. I'm glad that somebody got it. But yeah, I literally rewrote an entire section of choreography just so I could have that moment in it, which I'm going to show it again just because I love it so much. Wait for it, wait for it. So this that you're about to see is what was originally at that drop, and I think the faute was the right call. I'm glad I padded out a little bit to stick this a little later. So that segment that you just watched was actually a phrase that I wrote for a completely different project. I actually, so I can't remember why this was, but back in January, I was listening to Beyonce's Renaissance album a whole bunch. And oh God, I can't remember which song it was on it. I think it was, it's either Steal My Soul, Take My Soul, something like that, that I like was listening to just on repeat for a solid week. And I wrote a movement phrase around it that like literally the entire point of it was to just keep moving. Like it was, there would be no starts or stops. I would like keep moving. I would absorb momentum and then like funnel it back again. It was all about like winding up that spring and letting that spring go. And I loved what I wrote so much that I decided to put it in this piece. So yeah, let me do my victory lap here. Let me show off that phrase again. Starts right here. Boom. So that was all about redirecting the momentum to another plane. And now I go down to the floor. So this segment of the choreography literally is just me being in the studio, putting this song on endless repeat, going back in every single week for a solid month and just recording whatever I did, and sifting through hours of that to pick out individual little things that I liked and turn them into choreography, which turned out to be tremendously challenging because sometimes I was doing something that was very much a product of the moment, and sometimes I didn't quite know how to replicate the momentum as I had found it in that particular moment. So it took a lot of work to make all of this come together seamlessly. There's a lot of copying and pasting here, and a lot of moments where I'm just kind of like, I don't know how I'm getting from point A to point B, but in the end it worked out. So that meteor flower to contact roll was literally the last thing, the absolute last thing added to this piece. And it was added for one and only one reason. I knew that I was going to be performing it live to a couple fire/flow festivals. And I knew that there was going to be a bunch of poi tech bros in the audience that would get grumpy if I didn't include at least one thing that they thought of as tech. Never mind the fact that I'm doing plane brakes and toroids and all kinds of other stuff in here. There was something that had to be undeniably tech poi in there. And so I literally stuck that contact roll in for no other reason than to appeal the tech bros. And the irony of it is, I got the jitters every single time I perform this live, and I've never been able to land it live. While I was rehearsing this, it was strange because at the beginning of, like, when I wrote it, I knew it was going to be a challenge to do it, to be able to do it on demand, to do it regularly. And so I just started practicing that move alone and doing reps on it. And I kid you not, there was probably like a solid month I rehearsed this piece where I never messed it up once. A solid month where like I never failed to land it. And then when we got to the day of the video shoot, after doing this piece for an hour solid, and bear in mind, like, this is a really physically intense piece. For the first time, I started having times when, like, I would get the jitters too much and I wouldn't land that roll. And I actually had to take a break. Like, in the middle of the video shoot, I just straight up had to go to the videographer and was like, I need 10 minutes. Like, I need to reset my brain right now. I'm getting the yips. And we were able to come back, and literally the first thing we shot was what you just saw, me doing the throw and roll, because the videographer is just like, I want to get that shot and that shot alone right now. Like, I just want to make sure that we have it. So got that successfully, and then it was hit or miss for the rest of the shoot. Some takes I nailed it, some takes I didn't, and then, wouldn't you know it, I've never been able to nail it live now, which is really obnoxious, but yeah. Anyways. So, two other things I just want to note about this piece. The first one is what I'm wearing. I did actually put some thought into the costuming for this piece. So I knew I wanted to do the track pants simply because that's what I was wearing when I choreographed it. I'm wearing track pants right now. They're my favorite thing to wear when I'm dancing. But I also knew that because of what's going on in the intro here with sweeping my leg around and like having my knees bent. Whoops, let me go further back than that. So I knew that to register my knees being bent in this way, the track pants needed to have a stripe along the side of them. And I knew that I was going to shoot in the studio, so I knew that the backdrop was going to be black. That meant that I needed to track down a set of white track pants that had black stripes along the side because nothing else was going to read as loudly. You would not believe how hard it was to find this pair of pants. I actually had several false starts with this, ordering pants that either didn't fit or weren't going to work. They weren't the right color. Before I finally found this pair, and that happened 2 days before the video shoots. Also too, the top that I'm wearing, I don't know why I wanted this to be a tank top, just like for some reason that was what made sense to me, and I knew I wanted it to be very loose fitting. I didn't want it to be form fitting. I think like part of it was once the piece became about re-emerging into the world after, you know, the COVID quarantine, I think part of the imagery I had in my head was that this was supposed to be loungewear, like I was sitting around in my living room wearing like a tank top and a set of track pants. But again, I needed it, like, it needed to be a color that was going to contrast with the with the pants, as well as contrast with the background. So I lucked out in finding this really lovely bright purple tank top that was just perfect. Loose fitting, it breathed really, really well. It got incredibly sweaty in the course of this performance though. If you look real carefully throughout here, you will see massive, massive sweat stains on it from doing this piece for hours on end. Cool. So that was Big Sad, and everything I had to say about it. So, Afranon M, I hope that answered your question about how I choreograph things. Perhaps a little too much. Perhaps a little too much. Cool. More people were chiming in there. Brian Primo, I already did that one. David Russell, what sparked your interest in poi? Was it an instant connection or something you came back to after some rediscovery phase? So you want to know the funny thing? So I got into poi after going to Burning Man in 2006. That was my first year at Burning Man. That was the first time I saw fire spinning. And when I got back, I was living in Boulder, Colorado at the time. When I got back to Boulder, I asked around to my friends because I wanted to learn how to do it. I'm like, how? And I didn't know the word for it. So I'm just kind of like, hey, how do you do that fire thing that we saw at Burning Man? Do we know anybody that does that? And I was asking around for months and months and months. And finally I had a friend who said, what do you mean poi? And they literally could have said anything in the world and I would have just jumped at it because it was the first time somebody had responded to that with something other than just like a blank expression on their face. So I'm just like, yeah, poi, I want to learn how to do that. So it is completely arbitrary that poi wound up being the tool that I picked up. It literally is just, you know, it's happy accident. I'm glad it was poi. I'm really glad it was poi. Like, I love poi. I think maybe the question is what kept me with poi, and that is that, especially once I got into dance. Well, so what first made me fall in love with poi was the mathematical precision of it. I just loved the patterns in it. But what kept me in love with poi is that it was hard to dance with. Like, most flow artists that have a heavy dance focus almost always do it with a static prop. Something that, like, whether it is fans or triads or what have you, something that when you stop moving it, it can just stop with you in midair. You can't do that with poi. Poi does not have suspensions. So poi is unbelievably challenging to dance with. And I love that challenge. I love the fact that it's hard. I love that frequently my body and the poi are fighting over what they're meant to be doing. I absolutely love it. I feel like I'm eternally fighting gravity when I dance. And I've tried doing it with, you know, fans and double staves and a variety of other props. And none of them scratch that same itch for me of, like, I love it because it's hard, you know? It's too easy with props that are static, that aren't floppy. It's too easy with fans. Like, fans, you can literally just treat them like big hands as you're dancing with them. But with poi, like, goodness, what a challenge. Getting that to work with, especially the style of dance that I do, that's really, really heavily based in contemporary modern, that is such an enormous challenge. Like, just watching this performance that I put together, the number of tempo changes and moments when I'm, like, creating suspensions with my body that don't necessarily work with the poi, yeah, God, I just love the challenge of that. I love the challenge of bringing together those two pieces. And trying to dance with a static prop, I just feel bored, you know? I hate to say that, and it's not a value judgment on people who do enjoy dancing with static props, but I just get bored with it. Yeah, I need the challenge, you know? Great question, though. Jessica says, hey, Drex, I'm new to spinning poi and just bought a pair of spin balls poi, and I'm really enjoying your tutorials on how to use them. Great, I'm glad to hear that. I'm really glad that work is continuing to live on, because, like, you know, I remember when Kevin from Spinballs, like, you know, pitched me on doing those tutorials for their app, And like, I had only just barely gotten to a point where my video production skills had gotten to a point where I thought that I could do something that could live on an app rather than just being an amateur doing stuff on YouTube. And you know, I remember the process of writing those scripts and shooting those videos, and it was tough. Like, I was really a meat grinder because I had to shoot those tutorials at the same time I was keeping up with content on my YouTube channel. That was an enormous amount of work. And I'm really, really glad to hear that they are still inspiring people and they're still helping people along on their journey. That means a lot to hear, because I can't see the statistics on those videos directly, so I've got no idea how many people are watching them. I've got no idea how many people have downloaded the app, so that is really, really good to hear. Thank you for passing that on. Afronon M says, that's so cool. I have a heavy preference towards choreography that combines with the feeling of the song with the melody and the lyrics. Yeah. This, normally, like, when I try to choreograph to a song, I'm trying to choreograph to the feel of the song. This was the first time that I like had very, very deliberately choreographed to the lyrics. And I think it's part of why it was so difficult for me. But yeah, that's my hat's off to you if that process is easy for you, because it's definitely not for me. And also, thanks for the great answer. Sounds like you put a lot of work into making your choreography. Yeah. I tell you, like, I spent 6 months working on that choreography in one way or another, and then when the video came out, of course, it just kind of did mediocre numbers. It really broke my heart. Part of why I wanted to do a live stream on it and like take people through it. Like I wanted to hopefully like help people understand why it was so important to me. You know, there was a lot of myself that got poured into that. Blabe Robinson says, how much string manipulations have you played with? I feel if you pop the poi back into your palm, you can do some freehand Tracy stuff similar to dance. So I do a bunch of gunslingers. That's the majority of the string manipulations that I do. Of course, as you saw in this video, I did a bunch of shotguns too. Shotguns are just when you wrap the poi up in your hands, and that's the easiest way that I've found to get suspensions with poi, honestly. Yeah, I've done a little bit of string manipulations, not a lot. String manipulations were really popular. So string manipulations were really popular about when I first discovered poi, and then by the time I started getting into tech poi, they had kind of declined in popularity, and pattern spinning had kind of taken over as the most popular type of tech poi. So, you know, we were into the era of Vulcan Tech Gospel and Zan's Diamond and Cat Eyes and Unit Circle hybrids and things like that. And we were in that era for like, you know what, a good 2 or 3 years before contact poi hit, and contact poi just changed everything. Because when I got into poi, the word contact poi was used to refer to moments when the hand has contact with the tether. So things like wibbles. In a lot of ways, gunslingers are kind of like a resurgence of those old school tether manipulations. But yeah, once and like, people always forget this, but like, when Ronan first introduced contact poi, it wasn't a big hit. Like, people saw what he was doing and they thought it was kind of cool, but like, people like wanted sets of those poi not to do contact poi with them, but because they made stalls look really cool. When Home of Poi first started selling sets of what we now call contact poi, they referred to them as pendulum poi, because pendulums were the primary thing that everybody was getting those poi to use them for. They were used for like point isolation stalls and pendulums and vertical stacking and things like that. Almost nobody was doing contact poi with them. What changed that was a video that like has been lost to time now. Surreal released this video called Mana Poi back in the late 2000s, and that completely changed the game. That was the video that made contact poi a thing. Or I should say the version of contact poi where you roll a contact poi along surfaces of your body. Because Ronin already had the basic, like, you know, outer arm rolls and inner arm rolls, but like it was Surreal that got us doing, you know, folding lines and things like that. And that's when contact poi blew up. But yeah, like Ronin was around doing contact poi for years, and it was just seen as like a weird curiosity that only Ronin was into for the longest time. It didn't become the tech poi thing to do until Mana Poi came out. And then of course, a few years later, the music that Surreal used for that video was from an electronic music artist called The Orb, who at a certain point apparently just decided that none of his music was going to be used for purposes that he didn't approve of, and so he took down the video, and it has never come back up. As far as I know, there's still a copyright block on it, and so you can't see the video anymore. And so there's this weird kind of missing step in the history of contact poi that I think that a lot of people who are into contact poi right now think that, you know, it just, you know, Ronin started contact poi and, you know, we were off and running. And no, Ronin was doing contact poi for years and nobody cared. It was this one video that now nobody can watch that completely changed the game. Like, without Mana Poi, I don't know if contact poi would have become the thing that it has been. Like, nowadays, contact poi, like, if you're going to get into tech poi at all, contact poi is one of those major pillars of it, and that wasn't always the case. Even after contact poi, like as we know it now, was invented by Ronin, that wasn't the case for years. It was a really, really, like, it's funny how, like, the right person at the right time with the right thing can make or break a particular idea. And I think it's also kind of interesting thinking about, like, why wasn't it the right idea back in, like, what, 2005 when Ronin first started doing it, but why was it the right idea in 2009? Interesting questions to ponder. Blabe says, same with me. I started in 06 with glow sticks. So fun fact, all of my early poi teachers started on glow sticks. I did not. I was heavily influenced by people that spun glow sticks, but I never did. To this day, I'm useless with glow sticks. And I think it's funny, like, there's this whole thing in, like, music history talking about, like, the grunge era, which most of the artists that are looped in under the term grunge hate the term. But, like, grunge is, it's not really a term that denotes a genre of music per se. I mean, yes, Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and all of them, they played similar kind of, like, heavy metal inspired punk that, like, had a lot, basically, like, really heavy and droney feeling punk music. But what grunge really was a designator of culture. Like, there was a whole 90s culture that came around as a result of grunge. And within a few years, we had a bunch of bands that were learning how to play grunge music, but were not part of that culture. And that's when you get to what they call post-grunge, where you get bands like, you know, Bush and Creed and Stone Temple Pilots and things like that. Bands that are trying to sound like grunge bands, but culturally are not grunge bands. Like, you know, there's a reason why, you know, Creed may sound very much like, you know, Scott Stapp sounds like he's trying to, it sounds like he's doing an Eddie Vedder impression a lot of the time. But, like, the core audience for them are completely different than the core audience for Nirvana, who were, like, for the most part, like, nerd rock snobs in the early 90s. Whereas Annie Muniz, it's Drex, hi, it is me. So in the same, people who don't have the culture in common, but they're trying to make music that sounds like it. So in a similar kind of way, I kind of feel like the style of poi that I started off on, I would call it post-glow stringing for the same reason. That I was learning techniques from people who had come up glow stringing, but I never did glow stringing myself. I've never been to a rave. I've never been to an electronic music festival. I don't even like electronic music. But all the techniques that I learned were from people that had been immersed in that culture. And so in the same way that we can think of Stone Temple Pilots as being kind of like post-grunge, I think that I was post-glow stringing in terms of the style of spinning that I picked up. And you can do with that information what you want. Let's see here. Blade Robinson says, my first set was 70mm heads from Home of Poi. Nice. I actually made my own first set of contact poi. I found a set of, so that there's a store on the Pearl Street Mall in Boulder called Into the Wind that also stocks juggling supplies. And I found a pair of stage balls there that I drilled out and turned into a set of contact poi. That was my first set, but then once they were available on Home of Poi, I definitely bought a set of Home of Poi ones. And yes, 72mm were my first set as well. People also don't realize we started off with teeny tiny little heads. Like the 100mm thing came much later. That's how you know how big an impact Surreal had in all this. Ronin, I think to this day, still uses 72mm heads, whereas Surreal was the guy who brought in 100mm heads. And that, if you're spinning anything between 100mm and 90mm to this day, like Surreal's the guy that you got that from. Yeah. Claudia Chen says, LMAO, imagine inventing contact poi and people really liked your poi because they were big and looked nice for stalls, right? Well, I mean, I don't think, because bear in mind, Ronin has an incredibly distinct style, and vertical stacking and things like that are as unique to Ronin as contact poi used to be. Like, it's not like contact poi was just like this one bizarre quixotic thing that Ronin had in his arsenal at that point. Like, Ronin had several things that nobody else was touching. Like, that was part of what made him interesting as a poi spinner, is he had several things that, like, everybody else would just look at him and be like, what? Nah. And it just so happened to be that you know, this one guy came up with a whole bunch of stuff that could be done with contact poi. And, you know, vertical stacking and everything just didn't take off. To this day, I don't know if I can think of more than like 3 or 4 people that like do it really at all. Which is so funny to me because like everybody does horizontal stacking. And we only get the name horizontal stacking because, what's his name? Leo Akaza thought that a trick that Mel was doing in Red Pants looked like a horizontal version of what Ronin was doing with his stacking. And number one, that's not what Mel was trying to do at all. That was not what was in his head. Number two, like, you know, the vertical stacking thing never really took off, but now we have horizontal stacking, which is ubiquitous. So I guess in a way it's another one of those things where another artist came along and did a thing that just referenced something that Ronin had done, and it became this huge thing. So yeah, bunch of things in modern day tech poi. Ronin is like the great granddaddy that nobody knows was the guy who kind of like gave birth to the spark there. It's wild. Blade Robinson says, Surreal is the GOAT. Surreal brainstorming and Manipoi. Yes, amazing videos. Juggling calling video part, all bonkers tech. Yeah. Yeah, Surreal definitely gets name-checked these days as one of the more influential poi spinners, and definitely for good reason. Sunny, how do you choose the music you dance/spin to? Do you hear a song and think, that needs a poi routine? Actually, yes. If you're just joining us now, then you missed me breaking down a poi dance piece that I shot a video for back in June and released in August that literally came about because I heard a song that I'm just like, I want to create a poi routine to this. So a lot of times I will just put so I'm on Apple Music, and I gotta say the algorithms they have are fantastic. Like when I put on my Apple Music suggested station, oh, they've got my number so well. I'll listen to that for hours, and sometimes come back to it again afterwards. But like, yeah, a lot of times it's music that Apple suggests to me, which is weird because Apple at this point knows my taste really well. And sometimes they'll suggest a new artist to me, like the one that I recorded this last video, this routine to, and I'll be like, oh my God, hallelujah, they exist still and they're making new music. And then sometimes they'll suggest to me some artist from like the early 2010s that released like one album that is, I go and listen to and it's like, oh my God, this is amazing. How did I not know that this existed? And of course, they don't make music anymore. And it's just like, darn it. So in a lot of cases, just I'll get suggestions from Apple Music. Something I've actually been doing a lot lately, and the choreography video that I'm uploading to Instagram and YouTube tomorrow, the little like 30-second snippet of choreo that I wrote this week while I was in the studio. What I've gotten into the habit of doing is if I don't have a song in mind when I go into the studio, I'll basically like pull up Instagram and just see what music it's suggesting for reels. I'll go through like the top the three options it suggests at the top and everything, and I'll just see if there's something that's got a vibe or lyrics I can work with, and I'll write some choreography to that. And sometimes I discover cool music in the process, and sometimes it's like, yeah, this was fun for just this once. So, yeah. But yes, the answer is sometimes I hear a piece of music and I'm just going like, I'm writing a fucking poi routine to that. And sometimes it's whatever the algorithm on Instagram is pointing me to. So it depends. It depends. David Russell, Drex, thanks for answering all our questions. Super insightful. Thank you again for all the amazing content you have provided to the community. My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. Also, just to let you all know, I think I'm going to wrap it up here within the next 10 minutes. I thought I was only going to do this for like an hour. And we're nearing the end of the second hour here. So get those questions in the next hour here. In the next 10 minutes. Good Lord. Yeah, I definitely need to get off. Zach Steven, love the analogy. Yeah, cool. I'm glad you appreciate that. I swear to God, like about half of what I do in the flow world is taking ideas that I've gotten someplace else and applying them to flow arts and just seeing if they will stick. And sometimes I think I find something very, very, very cool when doing so. And sometimes I make people very angry when I do so. It all depends. Blay Robinson said, yeah, not a lot of rock spinners besides Russians. Yeah, yeah. I think maybe that's part of why I'm so into the Russian style, you know? Like, they're one of the few other poi spinners groups of poi spinners that really reliably spin to rock music. And I appreciate them. I appreciate that about them. Eleanor Ogley says, I have kind of a beginner question. I can't get the poi to go behind my back without going at an angle. You need to practice your behind the back planes is the long and short of it. Actually, that's going to involve switching cameras here. So let me right quickly see if there's any other quick questions I can get through before demonstrating that. Blay Robinson, or actually, no, I'll just do it right quick. Here's the drill you need. So to learn how to spin the poi behind your back, you start with the poi spinning on your side, and you gradually turn your body while keeping the poi plane in the same place, and work your way all the way around to having your hand behind your back, and the poi still spinning, and then work your way back out. This takes a while to learn. This is a process. This is new motor information for your body. You literally just want to drill essentially like moving back and forth with your hand on your side versus like tucked around behind your back. You just want to drill that for days, for weeks, and your planes will your planes will get fixed. It's just a question of grinding on that. Yeah. Let's see here. Who do you personally look at for inspiration in poi? That's a great question. So it's an interesting question because, like, in terms of poi dance, the answer is honestly nobody. Like, the style of dance that I do, it feels to me as like really unique in the poi world. I don't see a lot of other people trying to fuse together contemporary modern dance and poi in the way that I am. And so mostly I actually look to dancers for inspiration. Earlier this evening, I was watching, my favorite choreographer is a guy based out of LA by the name of Kyle Hanagami. Earlier today, I was watching one of his videos, and there was definitely like, there was a little phrase that he had his students doing with their feet that I was just kind of like, oh, I want to steal that. I definitely want to see if I can make that work with poi. Just in general with poi dancers, I mean, I love watching Ty Rochford's work. Ty is such an incredible virtuoso at making the prop and the dance work together. The only drawback there is that he does a completely different style of dance than I do. And so most of what he's doing really isn't that applicable to what I'm doing. And it's funny because like he and I have met several times, and like we've actually sat down and like tried to work stuff out together, and just found that because we've been trained in such different styles of dance that we had a really, really difficult time finding enough overlaps to be able to like collaborate on something really, which is kind of a shame. Some of the older work from Zhu Shutova is really beautiful. She's got a modern dance background, and there are some of her older videos where she's doing like some poi dance fusion that I think is really phenomenal, and some notes that I would still crib from that for sure. In terms of just like raw poi tricks, I mean, Mel is still doing incredible work, like a decade and a half in. It's really impressive. A lot of times I watch Mel's stuff and I'm just like really impressed by it, but not necessarily feeling the need to learn any of it. The last trick I saw somebody else do that I learned myself was one of Mel's tricks, but yeah, I'm just like kind of impressed and like, you know, go you, buddy. There's also a, I'm going to get myself in so much trouble here. I can't remember if he's Japanese or Korean, and if he's one and I make the mistake, people are going to be mad at me. There's a East Asian poi spinner who on Instagram is Pum Pum Joe, who is just an absolute dynamite virtuoso, and like somehow manages to both do crazy tech tree stuff as well as like doing some really off the wall body manipulations. Like he can do both, and he can do both exceptionally well. It's not fair. But he is one of those people that I really like to watch. Whenever he drops a new one, I'm just like, yeah, sign me up. I'm trying to think who else. A lot of times I just like the way specific people make videos. Like it's not so much that there's something particular about their style that I like, so much as it is I think they make great content. Right now, Sierra Nashed Potato is like really consistent about making really amazing content. Got to meet her this year. She's awesome. She's really fun. Trying to think who else. I miss her videos so much, but Katya Stakhanova, One Day Spin. I miss her tutorials so much. She's such a stylish spinner. Oh my God. Fantastic. That's all I can think of off the top of my head. There's probably more names, and I'll feel real bad about it later. But yeah, those are people I look to for inspiration for sure. Zach, do you ever have a creative block when it comes to poi? All the time. If so, how do you get it past personally? So here's the thing, like, I have a work routine. Like, this is the unsexiest answer ever, but it is the answer. I have a regular routine that I do for work. I have to get, you know, a certain amount of content up every week. And there are some weeks where I'm just kind of like, I don't have any good ideas, but I'm going to put up bad ideas because I have to put content out. Like, here's the thing, like, I learned a long time ago. This is going to seem like I'm giving a different answer, but I think it's actually the same answer. Like, part of that is when you reach points where you run out of motivation. Problem is, motivation is not in your control. It will come and it will go. What is in your control is discipline. You can show up and do the work every single day, whether you're motivated to or not, and you will still make progress. You cannot trust in motivation. You can trust in discipline. Develop the discipline, show up to work every day. And the thing about that is, when you finally do find the motivation again, it'll mean that you laid down enough groundwork that when motivation hits you, you will have so much easier time realizing the thing that you want to. Yeah, honestly, I hit creative blocks constantly, and I keep working. Even if I think it's a bad idea, because every once in a while, something I think is a bad idea winds up being really successful. Like, that's one of the reasons why, you know, you continue to produce stuff, because what winds up landing with people isn't up to you. Like, the moment you create a thing and it goes out into the world, it's no longer a thing that you own. It's no longer a thing that, you know, you have possession over. How that lands is up to the people that take it in. And sometimes a thing that you are absolutely not motivated by, sometimes the thing that you think is like the dumbest trash idea you've ever had will land and become wildly popular. And you can never predict when that's going to happen. And by the same token, sometimes things that you are hugely passionate about are going to land with a dull thud. The performance video I showed you all tonight, the whole reason we're doing this is that that video did land with a dull thud, and I wanted to talk about why it was so important to me. And at the same time, I recognize that that's going to happen with content. And it'll happen with your poi spinning too. There are some days when you're not going to feel stoked and you will have lost the motivational and inspirational spark. Still show up and spin. Even then, show up and do the work. Discipline is in your control. So do what's in your control. Yeah. Blade Robinson, thank you, Drex. We love you. Thanks. I love you too. Zach, Steven, glad I managed to tune in. I'm so glad you did too. Excellently explained excellently. Thank you. Claudia Chen, what is his Instagram handle? I don't know which hymn you're referring to. I put out a lot of hymns there. If you can follow up and tell me which one you mean. The East Asian poi spinner. That I think it's Pum Pum Joe or Pum Pum IO. Hang on, let me look it up here. It is Pum Pum Joe. Jian Jun Yu. Taiwanese. I was wrong either freaking way. Now I feel really bad. Now I feel really bad. Yeah, but his stuff is amazing. Go check him out nonetheless. That's really embarrassing. Oh my God. I'm sorry. Yeah. Do you find... I love the Japanese style of presentation. Yeah, I like it too. There's a bunch of Japanese yo-yo spinners that like are doing poi-inspired yo-yo that just blows my mind. That's a whole thing right now. Blay Robinson says, she's amazing. I've learned a lot from her. I'm going to assume that that means Katya Stakhanova. Sunny, do you find, or maybe Sierra Nash, I don't know. Oh, P-U-M, pum-pum. P-U-M underscore J-O. Sorry, I should have been more explicit about that. Sunny says, do you find yourself practicing more with your non-dominant hand, or at least when you were starting out? I try to actually train both hands equivalently. The one exception to this is when I teach classes, I mirror my students, and I assume that most of them are right-handed, so I teach all of my classes left-handed. Which sometimes makes them an enormous challenge for me. But yeah, I try to train both hands equally. But when I'm teaching a class, I always teach left-handed because I'm mirroring my students, and it gives me extra practice. Jillian Danskin says, can you use the bridge from Flow Toys with multiple props at different times? Yes, you can. And also, fun fact, did you all notice that the colors of the poi I was using in that performance video were changing at different points during the performance? The reason for that was that I used the Flow Toys app to do a custom color program for just that song, so the lighting cues matched up with my choreography and the music cues. There's a video on the way as to how I did that and the kind of theory of performance that I used for programming the lights, the colors that I did. That is on the way. It is, I'm hoping it'll be out before the end of the year. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Zach Stevens says, I understand what you're saying. Thank you. You're welcome. Zach Steven, I actually went through something similar with fighting games. I think I completely understand what you mean. Excellent. I'm glad to hear that. Blay Robinson says he's amazing. Claudia says, thank you. Afrenon M says, glad I was here. Started following you after seeing you at Northwest Flow Fest. Oh, so you were one of the people that saw the very first live performance of the piece that I showed the video on. Wow, now I'm curious. Now that you've seen the video of that same piece that I did in the performance showcase, which, like, I was an absolute train wreck in that performance showcase. I got the jitters so bad. So now I'm kind of curious, like, which version of it did you prefer? I found my way back to some of my marks, but I missed so many of them too. Thank goodness. Frankly, you're even cooler than I thought back then. Thank you. Thanks for answering my questions. You're so welcome. Blay Robinson, I train my non-dominant hand left. Now it's stronger, but it takes my right hand less time to catch up. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, friends, I said I was going to wind this down at 9 o'clock, and we're now 7 minutes past that. So I am genuinely going to wind things down now. Thank you, everybody who tuned in tonight. Real quickly, if you want to support the channel, I would really appreciate it. Do that by heading on over to patreon.com/DrexFactorPoi. There's a bunch of rewards that you can get there, including early access to all my content and a bunch of other stuff as well. I appreciate you all tuning in tonight. It's been a long time. Thanks for your time, Drex. Have a great rest of your night. Thank you, Zach. Blay Robinson says, much love, Drex. I appreciate it. Yeah, everybody take care. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. We will see if I do another one of these before the end of the year. Seems like Friday night is a good night for me to do these. I don't know why, but yeah. So we'll see the next time I have a Friday night available to do this. I will try and give you all more notice next time. This was very, very, very short notice. So thank you all for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it. And thank you for all of your wonderful questions. Thank you for your patience while I self-indulgently overanalyzed my own performance video. Sunny, haha, it's 2:10 a.m. here, so I'm off for much needed sleep. Yeah, definitely much needed. Thanks, Drex. It's been really informative. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you, everybody. Have yourselves a good night, and I will see you by the by. Take care and make sure you get in some flow this weekend, all right? Mwah. Peace out.